Just a few minutes into Monster Sanctuary, I knew I was in for a treat. Instead of wasting your time, it immediately begins with you choosing your starter and jumping into a battle. And let me tell you, these battles are so smooth I want to rub my face on them until I get kicked out of the pet store again. Pretty much every single battle is 3-on-3, and the order in which your monster is attacked matters. A lot. Depending on how you play Monster Sanctuary, you might want to have your buffer act first, boosting your team's stats. Or maybe you have someone inflict negative status conditions on your opponent's monsters, which will pay dividends throughout the battle. Each decision carries weight because you have a limited amount of mana at your disposal. You can't just spam your most powerful attack turn after turn. Mana does recharge, but there will be several instances where you have to use a weak vanilla attack to set yourself up for the next turn. I also really enjoy the amount of information always available to you. You know how much damage your attack will do, and if the opposing monster is weak or resistant to that attack. 5 minutes after that glorious start in Monster Sanctuary, my enjoyment deepened even further. Since it has Metroidvania elements, you can equip your monsters with weapons and accessories to increase their power. Not only that, leveling up earns you skill points, which means you choose how your monsters grow. These 2 points are awesome additions to the formula, allowing you to further customize your experience. But how do you gain new monsters? Instead of playing with your balls and hoping the monster watches, you're rated on your battle performance. Do well in a battle and the chances of getting good loot or a monster egg increase. To put it bluntly, Monster Sanctuary plays out less like a Pokemon game and more like a traditional RPG with a heavy focus on combat. It just so happens that your party is made up of monsters. Overall, the battling is super in-depth, and if you like having a dearth of information, or you're just a nerd who has erotic dreams about numbers, Monster Sanctuary is almost perfect. For everyone who doesn't dream about 69ing the number 69, the battles are still really good. However, they can drag on and become a bit tedious at times. Monsters never go down in one hit. I'd say the average battle lasts about 3 to 5 turns, even if your opponent sucked and victory is assured from the jump. The developers absolutely nailed what they were going for though, it just comes at the cost of that speed you want. Still, I'd rather have a game where battles are a massive part of the gameplay as opposed to something like Monster Harvest where it's an afterthought. As Monster Sanctuary progresses, the difficulty grows and the number of strategies both you and your opponent can use also grows. While it can be overwhelming at first, the more I played, the more I enjoyed it. Resetting your monster skill trees, something I did several times, is as easy as using an item, and the more you level up your monsters, the more powerful abilities and attacks you can unlock. The amount of customization here is absolutely insane. Team building has never been so important either. Here you have to balance things out, making sure your monsters are capable of handling any negative effects thrown your way while also trying to take advantage of weaknesses. Like I said before, if you enjoy having a bunch of numbers coming in your face, this is the game for you. Outside of battling, Monster Sanctuary is good, though not great. It's 2D and uses your monster's abilities at regular intervals. Say there's a treasure chest on a far ledge that normal jumping won't reach. Use a flying monster and now you can glide far enough. Or if there's a breakable wall, use a monster's claws to smash through. They've taken HMs from older Pokemon games and made them cool, except you don't have to waste an attack slot or carry a useless Bidoof. However, if you don't have the right monster in your party, you'll have to pass numerous treasure chests and grind until you unlock the monster you need. It's not as bad as killing the same enemy in Castlevania for an hour hoping you get their skill, but it does force you to backtrack. To touch on that backtracking, the map design is really good. While the rooms can be a bit bland, new areas connect to the old areas in really clever ways. It's not the greatest map ever created, but the developers put a ton of work into making sure it's cohesive, and I think that deserves a round of applause. The good kind. Not the sarcastic kind after you trip and fall in the cafeteria, spilling chocolate milk in your hair, then the cool kid stands up and gives you this little clap before everyone else starts laughing at you. One thing to be aware of is that Monster Sanctuary starts off very easy. While I could have agonized over every decision to get 5 stars in every battle, I wasn't really spending skill points or upgrading my equipment, yet I was mowing down every enemy. After a couple of hours though, it does pick up. The whole goal of Monster Sanctuary is to defeat champion monsters. Think of them like Dynamax Pokemon in raid battles. They're ultra powerful, but with enough strategy you can get through them and reap the rewards. A nice added bonus is you can re-challenge champion monsters to improve your score. It just speaks to the amount of care that the developers put into their game. Where Monster Sanctuary really clicked for me is about 3 hours in. I attempted my first full 6-on-6 trainer battle. It was intense and I'll admit I wasn't prepared, so I lost. It was like the curtain had finally peeled back. Except instead of seeing Ronald McDonald doing unspeakable things to Grimace, I saw the layers of Monster Sanctuary. From there I was using setup moves, healing moves, debuffing moves, it was all perfect. But after about hour 10 it does start to drag on. Battles get back to either taking a super long time or they're boring because you use the same strategy 20 times in a row. If I wasn't rushing to get through this as quickly as possible for a video, I could have taken my time and spent a few weeks beating it, increasing my enjoyment. So while I have tons of praise for Monster Sanctuary, you do have to grind and reset your skills and level up your equipment in order to advance the story. But it all comes together at the end, and by the final few hours, you're chucking a million status effects onto your opponent and feeling like a literal god of numbers. Ultimately, Monster Sanctuary isn't what I would call a Pokemon clone. Nexomon is a Pokemon clone. Monster Sanctuary is a really good, deep RPG with a million little choices you have to make. There's over 100 monsters, each with their own unique skill trees. There are several areas to travel through, and taking the time to explore those areas almost always results in treasure. While I haven't touched on everything the game has to offer because I don't want to spoil some of the more interesting elements, it's apparent how much passion went into this game. As long as your brain is wrinkly like an old man getting out of the hot tub, you'll get dozens of hours of enjoyment here. If it wasn't for the technical issues that cause hiccups quite regularly in several areas, and the few hours of almost mandatory grinding, Monster Sanctuary could have been S tier. But I happily place it in A tier.